Chosen one, anchor your spirit to the truth of what is about to be revealed, and let the noise of the world fade completely into the background. There is a voice in your head right now, perhaps one that has been whispering to you for years, telling you that your kindness is a profound weakness. It tells you that your persistent silence in the face of provocation is evidence of your defeat. You have been feeling an immense, crushing weight recently, as if the atmosphere itself is pressing down on your chest, working overtime against you. There is a reason for this relentless pressure, and it is not because you are failing. The opposition you are facing knows exactly what gets unleashed when you finally reach the absolute limit of your old self. The exhaustion of being constantly misread, the deep confusion about your place in the world, the quiet but violent warfare against your character, all of it is culminating in a fundamental shift. But you must hear this clearly. Your reality is not shifting because you have finally snapped under the pressure. It is shifting because of the immense, governed power contained in every single moment you deliberately chose not to. Think back to the moments this past week, or perhaps this past year, when someone pushed you far past the boundaries of what most ordinary people would have ever tolerated. Think of the times when people looked at your silence and arrogantly mistook it for surrender. They looked at your boundless patience and mistook it for permission to continue their disrespect. You may not have realized it in the heat of those agonizing moments, but your restraint was never a retreat. That restraint was the most dangerous, most lethal thing you have ever done to the forces that seek to diminish you. You did not lose those moments of conflict. You were loading a weapon. You have been brought to this exact realization today because you are standing at a critical threshold of your own evolution. The algorithm of your life has led you to this understanding so that you can finally receive the legal, spiritual decree that exposes why your profound gentleness is the most lethal force your opposition has ever encountered. For the longest time, you have walked out into the world believing the lie that being good inherently means being weak. You know intimately what the heavy pressure feels like. It has felt intensely personal, as if the circumstances of your life were specifically designed to find every soft, tender place within your soul and press directly into those wounds. You have likely spent countless nights lying awake in the dark, running conversations back through your memory, rehearsing every sharp, cutting thing you could have said, and asking yourself why you stayed quiet when they deserved the absolute full force of your anger. Perhaps someone in your life looked directly at your profound patience and labeled it passivity. They called it cowardice. And when they said that, something deep inside of you stirred, not in reactive anger, but in a quiet, terrifying recognition. You feel that stillness beneath the surface of your skin. You feel the heavy weight of your own silence. You possess a deep, undeniable knowing that if you ever fully release the fire that lives inside of you, the room would never be the same. The opposition has been whispering a very specific deception into that silent space. It tells you that your endless grace has cost you everything, that you have been entirely too forgiving, too available, and that people have simply taken advantage of every open door your gentle nature created. The accuser replays the memory of when you extended protection to someone who later weaponized that exact protection against you. It calls your mercy foolishness, suggesting that if you had only been colder, harder, and less merciful, you would be much further ahead. But this is a profound misunderstanding of your own spiritual architecture. Ancient wisdom speaks of the lion, which is mighty among beasts and retreats before nothing. And it speaks of a spirit that is not built on timidity, but on power, love, and a sound mind. Listen carefully to that specific pairing of elements: power and love. It is not power or love. It is not power despite your capacity to love. It is immense power channeled safely through love. With a sound mind actively directing both forces, you have been systematically lied to about how you are built. The world has convinced you that your deep compassion and your immense strength are in direct conflict with one another, suggesting that the softer you are, the less dangerous you become. This is the grand deception. The absolute truth is that a person who has never developed the profound capacity to love can never be trusted with true power. Conversely, a person who has never developed their capacity for formidable power can never fully protect the people and the peace that they love. You encompass both of these realities fully. The heaviness you carry in your chest is not the burden of a spirit that has been too open or too forgiving to the undeserving. The heaviness is the actual physical weight of a magnificent force that has been compressed for so long that when the release finally comes, it will not look like a chaotic explosion of rage. It will look like absolute, unshakable authority. Every single time you absorbed a blow that should have broken you, you were not losing ground. You were being sharpened on the anvil of experience. The most dangerous, powerful version of yourself is not the version that reacts emotionally to every provocation. It is the version standing right here, carrying the full, sobering knowledge of what you are actually capable of when your love is violently tested, yet still choosing integrity. This requires a level of self-mastery that most human beings will never reach in their entire lifetimes. We must understand the difference between the world's definition of weakness and the spiritual reality of governed strength. There is a specific type of person that humanity has consistently misread throughout history. They walk softly through the world. They speak with immense care. They absorb the pain of the atmosphere quietly, without spectacle, noticing the hidden sadness in the eyes of strangers. Because they do not erupt or retaliate, the world calls them naive and easy targets. But the world fundamentally misunderstands the nature of the ocean. The ocean is perfectly calm until the exact moment it needs not to be. And when the deep waters finally move, they possess the power to reshape entirely new coastlines and swallow ships whole. This is not done out of malice, but because that is the inherent nature of profound depth when it is finally disturbed. There is a vital difference between someone who simply cannot fight and someone who has consciously chosen not to fight. One person is entirely empty and defenseless. The other is a vast, deep reservoir. The empty person lashes out wildly at every slight because they have absolutely nothing left to lose. The reservoir holds back because it understands the staggering weight of the power it carries and utterly refuses to spend that power recklessly on unworthy battles. True meekness is not the posture of a doormat. In ancient languages, the word used for this kind of gentleness actually describes a wild, immensely powerful warhorse that has been fully trained and submitted to the master's reins. It is an animal capable of tremendous, lethal force, but it remains perfectly disciplined and responsive. Meekness is strength submitted to a higher purpose. But as we elevate this truth, we must also confront the psychological reality of how we process the pain we absorb. You have been walking through the world absorbing the heavy energy and the toxic behaviors of others, like the earth absorbs a heavy rain. But if the earth absorbs too much water without a natural mechanism for drainage, it drowns in a flood. You cannot merely absorb the blows of the world indefinitely without learning how to properly process and release them. Many deeply empathetic people trap this absorbed trauma inside their own bodies. It settles into the jaw, the shoulders, the nervous system, eventually manifesting as somatic illness, chronic fatigue, or sudden, uncharacteristic outbursts. Your silence in the face of an attack is a brilliant tactical pause, but you must eventually release the energy of that attack. You do this not by screaming at the person who hurt you, but by actively grounding yourself through intentional movement, through tears, through breath, and through the conscious, deliberate exhaling of what does not belong to you. Your ability to feel deeply is your superpower, but your absolute responsibility is to ensure that your physical vessel does not become a toxic storage facility for other people's unresolved darkness. This leads directly into a profound and uncomfortable truth that you must be willing to face if you want to step fully into your power. You must evaluate whether your gentleness is genuine or if it is a trauma response disguised as virtue. There is a pure version of gentleness that flows from a heart so rich and abundant that it naturally offers grace. But there is also a version of gentleness that is actually terror, wearing the beautiful costume of spirituality. It is a version of peacekeeping that is, in reality, profound self-erasure. You must ask yourself the hard questions. Are you extending endless forgiveness because you are truly sovereign over your emotions? Or are you calling yourself forgiving simply to avoid the terrifying confrontation that real, authentic boundaries require? Have you spent so much of your life accommodating the dysfunction of others that you wrap your deep aversion to conflict in the language of divine love? If we are completely honest, many deeply sensitive individuals learn to make themselves small in childhood because making themselves big drew dangerous attention. You learned that if you were the most understanding, flexible, and quiet person in the room, you could manage the chaotic emotions of the adults or peers around you. You became a masterful translator of other people's pain while allowing your own pain to sit silently in the dark. You have been spectacularly generous to a fault, offering your empathy to everyone except the one person who desperately needs it most, which is yourself. Overcoming this requires an act of radical honesty. You must look at the parts of yourself that have been fawning to survive and tell them that it is finally safe to stand up. As you step out of the shadows of false gentleness, you must learn to wield both the shield and the sword. Your governed strength, your inner peace, and your refusal to react emotionally to manipulators serve as your impenetrable shield. But true spiritual authority, they also demands that you pick up your sword. The sword is your boundary. It is your clear, steady, uncompromising voice. When a passive-aggressive coworker tries to undermine you in a meeting, governed strength does not mean shrinking down and absorbing the insult in the name of peace. Governed strength means looking them directly in the eye, with a completely regulated nervous system, and addressing their behavior with calm, unshakable clarity. When a family member attempts to manipulate you at the dinner table, your power is not found in throwing a tantrum, nor is it found in staying silent and crying in the car afterward. Your power is found in stating your boundary firmly, without a single drop of malice, and being fully prepared to walk away from the table if that boundary is crossed. The people who provoke you are incredibly predictable because they are entirely reactive. They are essentially mirrors, blindly reflecting back whatever chaotic energy arrives at their doorstep. Manipulators know how to manage predictable, reactive people. They know exactly which words to weaponize and which deep-seated insecurities to poke to send someone spinning out of control. They feed on the chaotic energy of a reaction. But when they push against you, and you do not give them the chaotic explosion they are desperate for, you become something they cannot control. And what the toxic mind cannot control, it deeply fears. This explains the relentless targeting you have experienced throughout your life. The reason you have been provoked so consistently is not random bad luck. You are not accidentally attracting toxic people. Toxic systems and manipulative individuals are naturally drawn to souls that carry an unawakened magnitude of power. They sense the vast reservoir of light inside you. And because their entire survival depends on keeping people small, manageable, and asleep, your mere existence threatens their internal reality. They test limits with you that they would never dream of testing with anyone else. They zero in on your wounds with uncanny precision because they desperately need you to believe that your sensitivity is a fatal liability. If they can keep you doubting your own sanity and exhausted by their drama, they can successfully delay your ultimate rise. Your awakening terrifies them because when you finally realize you do not have to play their game, you give everyone else in the room silent permission to wake up as well. Because of this constant targeting, you have spent years in the forge. Think of the ancient stories of leaders who were built in the wilderness. Before stepping onto any public stage, before receiving any outward recognition, there were the long, lonely, unglamorous years of isolation. There were private battles with predators in the dark, fought entirely alone, with no audience to applaud the victory. In those moments of deep isolation, you were not just surviving. You were actively constructing the permanent architecture of your destiny. Every betrayal you processed without allowing it to turn your heart black, every dark night of the soul where you chose to wake up and try again, built a private library of resilience that absolutely no one can ever take from you. The trials that were specifically designed to end your progress were the exact tools used to build a version of you that can never be ended. However, as you emerge from this forge, you must understand a vital distinction regarding the grace you offer the world. There is a massive difference between forgiveness and access, and failing to understand this difference will keep you trapped in cycles of abuse. You can completely forgive someone for the terrible ways they have broken your trust. You can release all the bitter poison of resentment from your heart, wishing them genuine healing and peace from a distance. But forgiveness does not require you to hand them the keys to your house ever again. You are allowed to govern your territory. True spiritual maturity is looking at a person who has consistently demonstrated that they are unsafe, forgiving their brokenness, and permanently locking the door to your life. The accuser will tell you that closing the door means you lack unconditional love. But unconditional love for others must never require the unconditional destruction of yourself. Sometimes, the absolute highest spiritual act you can perform is to walk away from a toxic environment, shaking the dust from your feet and refusing to cast the pearls of your deep empathy before those who only wish to trample them. As you step into this new paradigm of fierce, boundaried love, you must also confront the danger of isolation. Many who walk this path fall into the trap of the lone wolf syndrome. Because you have been misunderstood for so long, and because your profound depth has frightened people away, you have convinced yourself that you must walk the rest of this journey entirely alone. You have adopted a hyper-independent trauma response, believing that because no one else can hold your weight, you must never ask for help. But governed strength is also deeply vulnerable. True power recognizes that we are not meant to process the heaviness of the world in total isolation. You must begin to seek out and allow safe community into your life. You must find the others who speak your language, the ones who do not require you to translate your soul or dim your light. Allowing yourself to be seen, supported, and loved by safe people is the ultimate victory over the forces that try to isolate and destroy you. The ultimate barrier standing between you and your absolute freedom is not the people who hurt you in the past, nor the environments that tried to suffocate you. The final barrier is your own unresolved relationship with your formidable power. You know what you are capable of. You know the sheer magnitude of your intellectual, emotional, and spiritual depth. But somewhere along the line, you made a quiet, subconscious agreement to limit yourself. You decided that full power was fundamentally unsafe. You remembered the time you shone brightly and someone sneered at your light. You remembered when you offered your full, unedited self and it was leveraged against you. So you adapted. You learned that staying small meant taking fewer hits. You learned to proactively dim your own brilliance so that you would not have to experience the agonizing pain of someone else trying to extinguish it. That survival strategy made perfect sense in the hostile environments of your past. It kept you hidden when you needed to be hidden. But you are no longer in that place. And the armor that protected you in the previous season is now the exact thing strangling your growth in this one. You have been fiercely loyal to this agreement of smallness. You hesitate before speaking the absolute truth. You qualify your statements. You shrink your posture in rooms where you are meant to lead. You offer highly edited, heavily diluted versions of your magnificent gifts, waiting desperately for some external authority figure to hand you a permission slip to finally be who you already are. Hear this undeniable truth. Your beautiful gentleness was never meant to be the ceiling of your existence. It was only ever the foundation. The divine architecture of your soul never asked you to choose between being wonderfully kind and being breathtakingly powerful. That was a false binary handed to you by small minds who needed you to remain predictable so they could stay perfectly comfortable in the presence of something they could not possibly contain. The genuine invitation of your life, written into the very fabric of your survival, is to be both things simultaneously, without a single shred of apology or explanation. You are called to be the ocean at rest and the horrific storm in motion. You are called to be the voice that builds up the broken and the voice that brutally confronts the corrupt. You are called to be deeply tender in the spaces that require beautiful softness and forge steel in the places that demand absolute defense. You are called to finally, completely, implicitly trust yourself to know the exact difference between the two. You were never brought to this earth to be tamed by the insecurities of others. You were brought here to be trusted with the fire you carry, a soul that has been tested in the dark, that has learned to master its own reactions, and that refuses to abandon its own boundaries, is not a danger to the good in the world. That soul is the exact medicine the world has been desperately waiting for. It is time to drop the heavy, suffocating agreements you made with your own diminishment. While the waiting is completely over, the permission you have been searching for in the eyes of others is never going to arrive from the outside. It was always an inside job. Do not allow yourself to go to sleep tonight carrying the outdated, qualified, diminished version of yourself. Stand up inside your own life. Reclaim the absolute fullness of your architecture. Speak to the deepest parts of your nervous system and declare that you are no longer too much, and you never have been. You are exactly the magnificent measure that was intended. You release the toxic lie that your profound grace somehow disqualifies your greatness. You reclaim your fire, you reclaim your boundary, and you reclaim every single piece of your spirit that you ever handed over to rooms that were far too small to hold your presence. You are awake. You are moving. And you will carry your deep softness and your dangerous strength as one single, undivided force, because that is exactly what you were always meant to be. Step into the reality of your whole self and let the world completely adjust to you.